After 10 years of marriage, my wife said I never deserved her. The next day, I found her with my brother. I am a man of 35. The night my wife told me I never deserved her, she said it standing in our kitchen, stone cold calm, like she was reading a fact from a document I had signed years ago. We had been arguing about money, again. The sink was full of dishes. My work clothes still smelled like the warehouse. I was tired, hungry, and already on edge. She stood there in a clean blouse, makeup still perfect from the office, looking at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "You know what your problem is, Adam," she said. "You keep acting like I should be grateful you try. The truth is, you never deserved me. Not then, not now." She didn't shout. That made it worse. Her voice was low, steady, exact. I felt the words hit my chest one by one. I asked her what that was supposed to mean. I tried to keep my voice calm, but it came out broken. She rolled her eyes and said it was pointless to explain because I never understood anything anyway. Then she grabbed her bag, said she needed air, and walked out, leaving me alone with a cold plate of food and 10 years of marriage replaying in my head like a bad movie. I washed the dishes without really seeing them. My hands moved on their own. In my mind, I kept going back to when we were 25 and everything felt different. I met Laura at a friend's birthday. She was the kind of woman who walks into a room and everyone notices. Not because she was loud, but because she looked like she belonged somewhere more expensive. Perfect hair, expensive perfume, confidence in every gesture. I was just a warehouse worker who had stayed too long in the same small town. She laughed at my jokes that night. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a mistake. But she gave me her number and actually answered when I called. We started going out for cheap dinners and walks. She told me she worked in a bank, that she wanted more from life than most people. I told her I didn't really know what I wanted, except to stop feeling like I was behind. My younger brother, Mark, was always the one who made our parents proud. He was 2 years younger than me, taller, more charismatic, better in school. He went to university. I didn't. I started working after high school to help with bills when our dad got sick. Mark became the smart one. I became the reliable one. When I introduced Laura to my family, my mother smiled, my father shook my hand like I'd won something, and Mark looked at her with that curious, amused look he always had around new people. He turned on the charm, made her laugh, told stories about our childhood that made me look like the boring older brother who always followed the rules. I laughed along. At the time, it felt normal. Laura fit in fast. Too fast, maybe. She and my mother became close. She asked questions about Mark's studies, his plans. My mother answered proudly. I remember sitting at the table, listening to them talk about Mark's bright future while I cleared plates. Nobody meant harm. But I felt like furniture. Still, Laura chose me. At least that's what I kept telling myself. When she said yes to my proposal 2 years later, I felt like I had finally done something right. We had a simple wedding. Mark was my best man. He rested his hand on my shoulder in one of the photos and told me I was the lucky one. We moved into a small apartment above a bakery. I worked shifts at the warehouse. Laura worked at the bank, soon moved to a better position, then another. She was the one with the nice clothes and the promotion stories. I was the one with the sore back and the overtime. At first, none of that mattered. We were happy just to have our own place. We ate cheap pasta and laughed about the future. She used to say, "It's just the beginning. One day we'll look back and laugh at how broke we were." I believed her. Then, somewhere around year 4 or 5, things shifted. I didn't notice at first. It started with small comments. "You don't understand how my job works, Adam, it's more complex than lifting boxes. You should really think about studying something. You can't stay in that warehouse forever. Mark's company is sending him abroad again. See? That's what happens when people invest in themselves. She always said these things with a half smile, like she was joking. But she wasn't. I felt it. Each sentence left a small cut. Little by little, I started to feel like I was always failing a test I didn't know I was taking. Mark, on the other hand, seemed to succeed without trying. He got a job in a consulting firm after uni. Then a better one in the city. When he came back for holidays, he had stories about clients, hotels, and trips. My parents ate it up. My mother would say, "Did you hear what Mark did? He's so good." Then she'd turn to me and ask, "How's the warehouse?" Same tone you used to ask about the weather. Laura and Mark got along, maybe too well. They teased each other, shared jokes about corporate life, compared offices, talked about career plans I didn't understand. Sometimes I felt like a guest in my own living room. I told myself it was just insecurity. I told myself Laura loved me anyway. I was the one who shared her bed, not my brother. That was supposed to be enough. Around year 7, we started talking seriously about buying a house. Laura wanted something decent, not a starter home. She sent me links to places way over our budget. She kept saying, "We're not like your parents. We're not going to spend our lives in some small box." I tried to explain numbers. My salary. Her salary. What a bank might lend us. She refused to lower her expectations. She said, "You're thinking like a warehouse worker, not like someone who wants to move forward." That stung. Still, I tried. I took more shifts. I agreed to extra weekend work. I barely saw my friends. I told myself it was temporary, that once we got the house she wanted, things would calm down. We finally found a small house on the edge of town. It was not what she dreamed of, but the price was just within reach. We needed help for the down payment. My parents didn't have much. Laura's parents helped a bit. The rest came from a small loan. I watched the numbers and did the math. It would be tight. Very tight. Mark showed up on moving day with new furniture as a gift, expensive pieces that didn't match the old stuff. Laura's eyes lit up. She hugged him and said, "You're the best." I smiled and helped carry everything in, trying to swallow the mix of gratitude and humiliation stuck in my throat. The pattern continued. Laura and Mark always had something to talk about. Sometimes she would mention him at home. Mark said he's thinking of buying an investment property. Mark told me about this training that changed how he sees his job. Mark thinks you could do more with your life if you pushed yourself. I never asked why she was talking to him that much. Or why he felt comfortable commenting on my life. I told myself it was normal. We were family. The years passed. We never had kids. It wasn't a conscious decision at first. We just kept postponing. Money, work, stress. Then one day I realized we had stopped talking about it completely. Sometimes I wondered if part of Laura had never really seen a future with me that included children. The last 2 years before everything exploded were the worst. Her career took another jump. She was promoted to a manager position. Suddenly she was organizing teams, attending conferences, being invited to dinners with important people. She changed the way she dressed, the way she spoke. Her phone became glued to her hand. I stayed in the same job. I had become a supervisor at the warehouse, but it was nothing impressive. More responsibility, not much more pay. My body hurt all the time. My back, my knees, my shoulders. I came home exhausted. She came home irritated. "You're always tired," she would say. "Do you realize I work all day too? I don't want to come home to a zombie who just falls on the couch." When I tried to explain that physical work drained me, she shrugged. "You chose that. Nobody forced you." One night, after she spent the whole dinner talking about Mark's latest promotion, I snapped. I told her I was happy for him but sick of being compared. I told her I was doing my best. She looked at me with that same empty expression she had in the kitchen later, and she said, "Your best is the minimum, Adam. That's the problem." We went to bed without speaking. She turned her back to me. I stared at the ceiling and wondered when exactly I had turned from a husband into a disappointment on legs. The night before everything broke, the argument about money turned into something else. I had forgotten to pay one bill on time because I was covering an extra expense for my parents. My father's health had declined, and they needed help with medication. I chose them over some subscription Laura liked. She noticed it in the bank app. She started with questions. Then accusations. Then she shifted to my family. She said my parents had always held me back. She said I was still acting like the poor boy from a small house who needed to save everyone. Then she moved to Mark. "Do you know why Mark succeeds and you don't?" she said. "He doesn't carry dead weight. He thinks about his future. You just drag everyone on your back and then wonder why you're on the floor." I told her that Mark had never had to choose between school and paying rent. She clapped slowly, sarcastic. "Always the excuses. It's boring, Adam. Really. After 10 years of marriage, you still talk like life happens to you. You should be grateful I stayed this long." That's when she said it. Clear and sharp. "You never deserved me." The room went quiet. Even the fridge sounded loud. I asked her if she meant it. She shrugged. "Look at our lives. Look at you." Of course I meant it. She grabbed her bag and left, leaving that sentence floating in the air like smoke. I slept horribly that night. Half on the couch, half awake. I kept checking my phone. No message. No call. I told myself she had gone to cool off at a friend's place. To be honest, a small dark part of me wondered if there was someone else. But I pushed that thought away. I didn't have the strength to face it. The next morning, she walked in just before I had to leave for work. Same clothes as the night before, hair tied back, no makeup. She looked tired but not destroyed. She didn't apologize. She just said, "We need to talk. Tonight." I asked where she had been. She said, "Out." I asked with who. She said it wasn't my business. Something inside me dropped a few degrees. At work, I couldn't focus. Boxes blurred. Numbers on the scanner meant nothing. My manager asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes. As the day went on, one thought kept circling my brain. If she could say, "You never deserved me," so easily, maybe she had already emotionally left our marriage long ago. Around noon, my mother called. I didn't pick up, I was in the middle of unloading a truck. She left a message saying my brother had told her something about me and Laura going through a rough patch, and asking if everything was okay. That surprised me. I hadn't said anything to Mark. Apparently Laura had. When my shift ended, I checked my phone again. One new message, from my brother. "Hey, man. If you need to talk, I'm around. Laura seemed really upset yesterday. Don't do anything stupid." I froze. Laura had talked to him about our fight before talking to me. She had told him I might do something stupid. I didn't even know what that meant. I wasn't violent. I wasn't reckless. But once words like that are out, people start building stories in their heads. On the way home, I stopped at my parents' place to drop off some groceries. They lived 15 minutes from our house. I didn't tell Laura, I didn't tell anyone. It was just a quick visit. At least, that's what I thought. My parents weren't home. My father had a doctor's appointment, and my mother was with him. Their car was gone. But there was another car in the driveway. My brother's. That was strange. He usually texted if he was visiting on a weekday. I walked up to the door and noticed it was half closed. Not locked. My first stupid thought was that my mother had forgotten again. She did that sometimes now. I pushed the door fully open and called out. "Hello? Mom? Dad?" No answer. I stepped inside. The hallway was quiet. There were 2 pairs of shoes by the door. My brother's sneakers. And Laura's boots. My heart started pounding. My brain immediately tried to produce innocent explanations. Maybe they were discussing me. Maybe Laura had gone there to talk to my mother. Maybe Mark had come too. Maybe they were planning some kind of intervention. I walked further in. The living room was empty. I heard a noise upstairs. A muffled sound and then a laugh. A laugh I knew. Laura's. Then a deeper voice. Mark's. I remember that moment before the door. My legs turned heavy. Part of me wanted to stop. To turn around. To leave the house and pretend I hadn't heard anything. I think I knew, deep down, what I was about to see. But I needed the truth to be in front of my eyes, not just in my head. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step louder than usual. The bedroom door at the end of the hallway, the room my parents used to sleep in, was slightly open. Light leaked out. I could hear them more clearly now. Laura said something I couldn't catch, then laughed again, softer. Mark answered in a low voice. I pushed the door. It hit the wall with a dull sound. They both turned at the same time. They were on the bed. Not fully undressed, but enough. Laura's shirt was open at the top. Mark's belt was loose. Their bodies were close, too close for any excuse. For 1 second, nobody moved. Their faces went from surprise to panic faster than I thought possible. Laura grabbed the sheet. Mark sat up, trying to fix his clothes. I felt my ears ring. The whole room shrank to their 2 faces, red and guilty. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, feeling something inside me split cleanly down the middle. Laura was the first to speak. "Adam," she said, voice shaky. "It's not what you think." I stared at my own brother sitting on my parents' bed with my wife. Mark opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "Let me explain." I looked around that room. The same wardrobe my father had built. The same curtains my mother had chosen. The photos on the wall. Our family. Me, Mark, our parents. Birthdays. Holidays. They had chosen that room. That bed. That house. Something hot and cold rose in my throat at the same time. I took 1 step back, then another. My body moved before my brain caught up. I turned around and walked out without saying a word. I heard them both calling my name, footsteps behind me, but I kept going. Down the stairs. Out of the house. Into the street. I heard Mark's voice behind me on the driveway. "Adam, stop. Don't be childish. We need to talk." I kept walking. He grabbed my arm. I pulled it free so hard he stumbled. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice surprised me. It sounded empty. Laura came out too now, wrapped in a cardigan, hair messy. She reached for me. I stepped back. "Adam, please." She stopped. She couldn't even finish the sentence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't look at it. I didn't look at them. I just walked away, leaving my wife and my brother standing in my parents' yard, half-dressed, in the middle of the day. I walked for a long time, without direction, like my legs were trying to escape my life. At some point, I found myself sitting on a bench in a small park where my father used to take us as kids. I stared at the ground, trying to process what had just happened. The sentence from the night before came back. "You never deserved me. Now I understood what she really meant. She wasn't saying I didn't deserve her love. She was saying she had already decided to give herself to someone she thought was better. My brother. My phone kept vibrating. Calls from Laura. Calls from Mark. Messages. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't trust myself to speak. I felt like if I started talking, I would either break down or do something I wouldn't be able to take back. Hours later, when the sky started to get dark, I finally went home. I didn't know if Laura would be there. I didn't know what I would do if she was. My hands were shaking when I put the key in the lock. She was waiting in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch like a guilty teenager. Her makeup was smudged, like she had cried and then tried to fix it. She stood up when I entered. "Adam, please, we need to talk," she said. I dropped my keys on the table and stayed near the door. I didn't take off my jacket. I didn't sit. I just said, "How long?" She froze. She started. It wasn't. "How long?" I didn't raise my voice. It came out low, from somewhere deep. She swallowed. Looked at the floor. "A few months," she said finally. "It just happened." "A few months," I repeated. "With my brother. In my parents' house." "It wasn't planned," she said quickly. "We were talking a lot because of everything. Your stress, your moods, the money." I felt alone. He understood me. One thing led to another. One thing led to another. That's what she said about destroying 10 years of marriage and any trust left in our family. I asked if that was where she had been the night before, after telling me I never deserved her. She hesitated just long enough for me to know the answer before she opened her mouth. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said. "We didn't expect you to come today. Your parents were out. We thought we had time to talk." "To talk," I said. "With your shirt open on my parents' bed." She flinched. "Don't say it like that, Adam." "How should I say it?" I asked. "Kindly? Politely? Like a manager in one of your meetings?" She started to cry then. Real tears, or at least they looked real. She said she felt confused, that she still cared about me, that she didn't know what she wanted. She kept repeating that we needed to handle this like adults. She said we should maybe try a break to think. A break. She wanted to schedule my heartbreak like a project. I told her there was nothing to think about. She had slept with my brother. More than once. In my parents' house. Behind my back. While telling me I was not enough. She said I was simplifying it. I said there was nothing complicated about betrayal. Then she dropped the next bomb. She said Mark loved her. Those were her words. "He loves me." She said they had talked about my limitations, about how I was stuck, about how I dragged her down. She said with him, she felt seen as the woman she could be. I stared at her and saw, maybe for the first time clearly, that she truly believed that. Somewhere along the line, she had rewritten our whole history in her head. I was no longer the man she had married and built years with. I was the warm-up act before the real show. When she said Mark's name with that softness, something in me turned cold. It wasn't just anger. It was a kind of deep, quiet disgust. I asked her if my parents knew. She said no. She said they only knew we were having marriage problems, and that she had leaned on Mark because he was family. I told her that if she or my brother dared to step into my parents' house again like nothing had happened, I would tell them everything. Every detail. Every message. Every timing. I would not let my parents sit at the same table with their 2 sons while not knowing one was sleeping with the other's wife. She went pale. "Don't punish them for our mistakes," she said. "It's not punishment," I replied. "It's the truth. If they lose respect for you, that's on you. She asked me what I wanted to do now. I said the first word that came to my mind. Divorce. She started to sob harder, saying we shouldn't decide that in one night, after 10 years together. She said we should think, maybe go to counseling, at least talk with a professional. I told her she should go to counseling with my brother, not me. She shouted then. For the first time that day, she screamed. You can't act like you're perfect, she yelled. You ignored me for years. You made me feel alone in that house while you played hero at your parents' place and in that stupid warehouse. Mark was there when you weren't. He listened. He didn't make me feel small. That last sentence hit me wrong. He didn't make you feel small, I repeated. So you slept with him. That's how you balance size in your head? She slapped me. Not hard enough to hurt physically. Hard enough to mark a line. We stared at each other. Two strangers sharing a house full of shared memories that suddenly felt contaminated. I didn't hit back. I didn't insult her. I just walked to the bedroom, grabbed a bag, and started filling it with clothes. She followed me, begging, shouting, alternating between apologies and attacks. Nothing she said reached me anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mark. Bro, I know you're angry, his message said. We didn't mean to hurt you. Let's talk. We. Not I. We. I put the phone down, zipped my bag, and walked back to the front door. Where are you going? Laura asked, shaking. Away from you, I said. For now. She grabbed my arm. If you leave like this, it's over, she said. It was already over, I replied. You just picked the time and place to announce it. I left, the door closing behind me with a quiet click that sounded louder than any slam. On the stairs, I suddenly remembered the way she used to look at me in the early years, when we lived above the bakery and shared one cheap blanket because we couldn't afford a second. I wondered when that woman had turned into the one upstairs. That night, I slept on my parents' old couch, alone in their silent house, in the same place where, only hours before, my brother and my wife had torn apart what was left of my life. The worst part was not the image of them together. The worst part was the flood of questions that came after. How many times? Where else? Since when had I been the last to know what everyone else already suspected? I realized something sitting there in the dark. The betrayal didn't start in that bed. It started long before, in small looks, private messages, conversations I wasn't part of. The scene I had walked in on was just the end of a long process they had both allowed. And I knew, with a sick kind of clarity, that the hardest part was still ahead. Because my parents didn't know yet. And my brother wasn't just another man. He was the one person I had been taught all my life to trust like myself. I woke up on my parents' couch with a stiff neck and a buzzing head. For a few seconds, I didn't remember why I was there. Then it all came back at once, like a wave hitting my chest. Laura's face. Mark's belt. My mother's bed. My phone was full of missed calls and messages. I didn't open any of them. I stared at the ceiling and tried to decide what to do next. Around 9, my parents came home from my father's appointment. My mother walked in first, carrying a bag. She stopped when she saw me on the couch, hair messy, still in yesterday's clothes, an overnight bag on the floor. My father came in slower behind her, hand on the wall, breathing heavy. What happened? My mother asked immediately. Why are you here? I sat up. My heart pounded. I had promised myself I would tell them the truth. But now, looking at their tired faces, it felt like I was about to drop a bomb in the only place I had left. Sit down, I said. My mother's eyes narrowed. She knew that tone from when we were kids. She sat. My father lowered himself into the armchair with a small groan. It's about Laura and Mark, I said. My mother's face lit up for a second. Did they have a fight too? She asked. Mark looked stressed on the phone yesterday. Maybe you all need a break. My throat tightened. I took a breath. No, I said. They didn't have a fight. They had an affair. The word hung in the air like smoke. My mother blinked, as if she didn't understand. My father stared at me, then frowned. What are you talking about? He said, voice rough. I found them, I said. Yesterday. Here. In your bedroom. Silence. Dead, heavy silence. My mother shook her head slowly, like she could shake the words away. No, she said. Not Mark. Not Laura. You must have misunderstood. I almost laughed. Misunderstood? I said. I opened the door. I saw them. Together. Not an accident. Not a hug. Not a misunderstanding. My father's jaw clenched. A vein pulsed in his temple. He gripped the arm of the chair with his thin hand. Are you sure? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. My mother covered her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. How long? My father asked. A few months, I replied. At least. She admitted that much. My mother started to cry. Not loud, just a slow, steady leaking that looked like something inside her had broken and would never seal again. My father stared at the floor, his breathing heavy. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, my mother whispered, "My boys, what did I do wrong?" That sentence cut me in a place I didn't know existed. I moved closer and took her hand. You didn't do anything, I said. This is on them, not you. She shook her head. You were always the one who helped, who stayed, who did everything. Mark was different. I should have seen. My father raised a hand to stop her. He looked at me with tired eyes. What do you want to do? He asked. I've already told Laura I want a divorce, I said. I'm done. I'm not going back. My mother sobbed harder. 10 years, she whispered. I felt like I was watching my own life from far away. Everything I had built in the last decade was collapsing in a single weekend, and I was just narrating it. Later that day, Mark called my mother. She put it on speaker without telling him. His voice was cheerful at first, then cautious when he heard her tone. Mom, how are you? He asked. How am I? She replied, voice shaking. Mark, what have you done? He went silent. Then he said, he told you. Yes, he told me, she said. Is it true? He didn't deny it. That hurt more than anything. He just sighed and said, Mom, I didn't mean for you to find out like this. Like this? She repeated. What other way is there to find out your son is with your other son's wife, in your bed? He started talking fast. He said things about feelings, about how he and Laura had connected, about how he had supported her when I wasn't there emotionally, about how it was complicated. He used long words to cover ugly actions. My father leaned forward in his chair. Mark, he said firmly. Stop. Answer me one thing. Do you love your brother? There was a pause. Yes, Mark said finally. Of course I do. My father's voice stayed calm. Then you don't do this, he said. Not with his wife. Not in our house. Not ever. Mark said he knew it looked bad. He said he felt torn. He said he wished it had happened differently. At no point did he say, I'm sorry, in a way that sounded like he understood the damage. When my father told him I was there, listening, Mark changed tactics. He spoke directly to me. Adam, tell them how you've been these last years, he said. You were always angry, always tired, always complaining. You pushed Laura away. You ignored her. I didn't seduce her. She came to me for support. We didn't wake up one day and decide to hurt you. What he said made my mother cry harder. It also made something clear in my mind. They had a story. It wasn't, we betrayed Adam. It was, Adam made us do this by failing first. I took the phone and spoke for the first time in that call. You had 100 choices that weren't my wife, I said. You picked the one person you knew would destroy me. Don't stand there and pretend it's my fault because life was hard and I was tired. He tried to interrupt. I didn't let him. And don't hide behind words like support and connection, I added. You knew what you were doing every time you texted her behind my back. Every time you told her she deserved better. Every time you opened your arms when she wanted to complain about me instead of talking to me. You didn't trip and fall into her. You walked. There was a long silence. Then he said something that finished killing whatever was left of our relationship. Look, Adam, he said. I'm not going to apologize for loving someone. You can make yourself a victim all you want, but we're not kids anymore. Laura and I have feelings. We're not going to bury them just because you decided to settle for a small life. My father hung up. He didn't insult him. He didn't shout. He just pressed the red button and put the phone down like it was dirty. He looked at me and said, "You stay here as long as you need." For the next few weeks, everything happened fast and slow at the same time. Laura moved out of our house and into. I don't know where exactly, at first. She said her friend's place. I suspected Mark's eventually, but I didn't check. I blocked both of them on social media. My lawyer told me to keep communication minimal and written. Laura sent long emails at the beginning. She said she wanted to take responsibility but also explain. She repeated that our marriage had been dying for a long time, that I had stopped being present, that she had felt emotionally abandoned. She never acknowledged the brutality of choosing my brother. She wrote that she hoped we could end things with respect. Respect. A strange word coming from someone who chose my own family to cheat with. I didn't answer. I forwarded everything to the lawyer. Mark tried different tactics. He sent short texts at first, "We need to talk like men. You're still my brother. One day you'll understand." When I didn't respond, he wrote a longer message saying he refused to be demonized for following his heart, that life was short, that he hoped one day we could rebuild something. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Rebuild what? You can rebuild a house after a storm. You can't rebuild a house that someone set on fire on purpose. The divorce itself moved quickly. Laura wanted it fast. Now that we were past the shock, she pushed for practical solutions. Sell the house or buy each other out, divide what little we had. There wasn't much to fight over. We didn't own luxury cars or fat savings. The biggest piece was the house. That house had been the center of so many arguments. Suddenly, it was just an asset to split. In the end, we agreed to sell it. The market was not great. We both walked away with less than we hoped. She had her salary and her future with Mark. I had my warehouse income and a messy heart. The worst part wasn't signing the papers. It was how people around us reacted. Some friends of hers stopped talking to me. They had only ever seen our life through her stories. In her version, I was the angry, unambitious husband who didn't support her career and tried to keep her in a small box. They believed her. Maybe they wanted to. It fit a simple narrative, the woman who outgrew her man. Some people in my family were shocked and supportive. Others were uncomfortable. Cheating happens in movies, not at Sunday lunch. And with a brother on top of that, it was too much. A few relatives tried to stay neutral, refusing to take sides. They said things like, "It's between you and them," as if my brother sleeping with my wife was a private disagreement about taste, not a punch to the family's core. My parents chose me. Not because I'm perfect, but because they saw everything. They saw who changed the light bulbs in their house, who took them to appointments, who stayed late at the hospital. They also saw the emails and messages when I finally showed them. The way Mark and Laura had talked about me like a problem to solve. My mother never spoke to Mark again after that first call. My father sent him one letter, short, stiff, and final. "You are my son," he wrote. "But I cannot respect the man you are choosing to be. That is all I have to say." I heard that Mark showed this letter to some cousins and called my father dramatic. He told them, "The old man doesn't understand." That sentence told me everything I needed to know about where his heart had gone. Months turned into a year. Laura and Mark made their relationship public. Photos started to appear online. Them at restaurants. Them at a concert. Them on a trip. Smiling. Happy. Two successful people in nice clothes. My stomach flipped the first time I saw a picture of them together with my mother's old curtains in the background. They were living in my parents' house now. When my mother found out, it broke something in her. She stopped cooking. She stopped opening certain doors in the house. She said the place didn't feel like home anymore. I suggested they move, but my father refused. He said he wouldn't run from his own son. One evening, about a year and a half after the divorce, something happened that shifted the balance a little. My manager called me into his office. He closed the door and looked serious. For a second, I thought I was getting fired. Instead, he told me that the regional director had noticed my work. They needed someone reliable to coordinate operations at a new location. It was a promotion. A real one. More responsibility, more pay, better hours. Not a miracle, but a step. I went home, well, to the small apartment I had rented, and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. I realized that for the first time in a long time, something good was happening to me that wasn't tied to someone else. Not my parents, not Laura, not Mark. Just me. I accepted the promotion. The new location was in another part of town, closer to a different neighborhood. Slowly, my life began to look less like a constant reminder of what I had lost and more like the start of something different. I still saw my parents every week. I handled their paperwork, their medicines, their small worries. Mark never visited when I was there. We moved like planets in different orbits that never crossed. I knew he came by sometimes when I wasn't around. He brought groceries, fixes. My parents didn't throw him out. Blood is complicated. But there was always a tension after his visits, a heaviness in the air. One Saturday, I arrived at my parents' house and found my mother sitting at the table with an envelope in front of her. Her hands shook slightly. "It came today," she said. It was a wedding invitation. Laura and Mark. The card was fancy. Their names written in elegant letters. The message about celebrating love after a long journey. The date, the venue, the formal tone. That was the part that made me feel sick. They had turned our disaster into a romantic story. My mother handed me the card without saying a word. I read it and felt nothing at first. Just a blank space where anger used to live. Then I flipped it and saw there was a handwritten note at the bottom. "Adam, I hope one day you can forgive us and maybe be there. You're still family. Mark." I laughed. I didn't mean to, but I did. It came out sharp and bitter. My mother flinched. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." I tore the invitation in 4 pieces and put them in the bin. My mother watched me, eyes wet but proud. "They really think you could stand there and watch them do vows?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "Because in their story, they're the brave ones." 2 weeks later, Laura showed up at my apartment. I hadn't seen her in months. She stood in the doorway in a neat coat, holding a small bag. She looked nervous for the first time since everything went wrong. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She sat at the table, looked around at my simple place, and tried to smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "How are you?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Better." She nodded. "I heard about your promotion," she said. "Congrats." I didn't ask how she had heard. It didn't matter. News travels. She took a breath. "I wanted to talk to you before the wedding," she said. I said nothing. She continued. "I know you think my life is perfect now," she said. "It's not as simple as it looks." I didn't answer. She went on. "Mark is. Mark," she said. "He's always chasing the next thing. The next client, the next project, the next idea. It's exciting, but it's exhausting too. Sometimes I feel like I switched one type of stress for another." For a second, I saw something raw in her eyes. Doubt. Regret. Maybe not about leaving me, but about believing that being with Mark would magically fix the emptiness inside her. She looked down at her hands. "I'm not here to ask you to bless us," she said. "I know that's too much. I don't want you to carry this weight forever. I know what we did was unforgivable. I tell myself I had reasons, but when I look back, it still feels ugly." "Because it was," I said. My voice was calm. She nodded, tears in her eyes now. "I convinced myself you didn't love me enough," she said. "That you were stuck. That you were the reason I felt trapped. It was easier than looking at my own frustration, my own impatience. Mark kept telling me I deserved better. I wanted to believe him. It made me feel powerful. Special." She swallowed. "But whenever I think about that day in your parents' house, I feel sick," she added. "Not because we got caught. Because of how disrespectful it was. To them. To you. To everything we had before." I listened. I let her talk. I felt no need to comfort her, but I also didn't want to be cruel. Her pain was hers. Mine was mine. They didn't cancel each other out. Finally she said, "I'm sorry. Not, I'm sorry you feel hurt. Not, I'm sorry you took it this way. Just, I'm sorry." It took her 2 years to manage that sentence. I nodded. "I believe you're sorry," I said. "But sorry doesn't fix anything. It just names what already happened." She wiped her eyes. "Mark thinks you hate him forever," she said. "I don't hate him," I replied. "I don't think about him enough to hate him. He's just not my brother anymore. Not in the way he was." That answer seemed to hit her harder than any insult. She grabbed her bag and stood up. "I hope your life gets easier from now on," she said quietly. "You were always better than you thought." I let that sentence hang. For 10 years, I had needed to hear something like that from her. Now it felt late. I watched her leave and didn't feel the urge to run after her. The day of their wedding came and went. I worked a normal shift. After work, I went to my parents' house. We ate simple food, watched something stupid on TV, and pretended not to think about the party happening somewhere else, with fancy clothes and speeches about destiny. Later that night, my mother went to bed early. My father and I sat in the kitchen. He poured himself tea and looked at me over the cup. "Do you regret not going?" he asked. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I regret ever putting them in a position where they thought it was possible to ask." He smiled sadly. "You know," he said, "when you were kids, I always worried about Mark. He was charming, but he never took anything seriously. I worried he would hurt people. I worried you would always be cleaning his mess. I never thought he would make a mess this big." I sighed. "It's strange," I said. "I spent my whole life thinking I was the weak one, the one who didn't do enough, the one who should be grateful. Now I see. I was the one who stayed when it was hard. He was the one who took shortcuts. My father nodded. Character shows in the dark, he said. Not in the photos. We sat in silence for a while. The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere in the distance, cars passed. Sometimes I still wake up with the image of that bedroom in my head. Sometimes I still hear her voice saying, "You never deserved me." On bad days, the old pain comes back, sharp and sudden. But there is a new voice now too, quieter but stronger. Mine. It says, I may not have been the man she wanted in her fantasy, but I was the man who showed up, day after day, with what I had. I worked. I cared. I tried. That's worth more than any story she and my brother had to invent to live with themselves. After 10 years of marriage, my wife told me I never deserved her. The next day, I found her with my brother. For a while, I believed both sentences. Now, I only believe the second one. The first was never true.
Follow me for more stories.